There is a moment that quietly shapes every human life. It happens long before success, long before failure, long before anyone else notices. It is the moment when you make a promise to yourself. Tomorrow I'll start. Tomorrow you'll wake up earlier. Tomorrow you'll exercise. Tomorrow you'll finally write the first page. Tomorrow you'll stop procrastinating. Tomorrow you'll become the person you've imagined for years. At first, that promise feels powerful. It fills you with hope. For a brief moment, your future seems different. But then tomorrow arrives. The alarm rings. You hit snooze. The workout becomes another excuse. The book stays closed. The difficult conversation waits another day. And before you realize it, tomorrow has quietly become next week. Then next month. Then another year. Most people believe these moments happen because they lack discipline. But what if discipline isn't the real problem? What if the struggle begins much earlier, hidden beneath habits so ordinary they've become invisible? Imagine standing on the bank of a wide river. Every morning you intend to cross it. You even know exactly where you want to go. But instead of building a bridge, you keep trying to leap across in a single jump. Each attempt ends the same way. You fall short. You climb back to the shore, and you tell yourself you'll jump harder tomorrow. That is how many people approach self-discipline. They expect one burst of motivation to carry them across years of inconsistent behavior. When it doesn't work, they blame themselves. But the problem was never the jump. The problem was the bridge they never built. There is a reason the most disciplined people often appear effortless. They are not constantly forcing themselves to make the right decision. They have designed a life where the right decision requires less effort than the wrong one. This is one of the greatest misconceptions about discipline. We imagine it as endless willpower, a constant battle against temptation, a heroic struggle that only extraordinary people can endure. Yet psychology tells a very different story. Your brain is always searching for efficiency. Every repeated action is gradually transferred from conscious effort to automatic behavior. The more often you perform a routine, the less energy your brain needs to repeat it. This is why brushing your teeth requires almost no thought. It is why experienced drivers sometimes arrive home with little memory of the journey. And it is why both productive habits and destructive habits eventually feel automatic. Your brain is not asking, "Is this helping me become the person I want to be?" It is asking something much simpler. Have we done this before? If the answer is yes, your brain quietly begins preparing to repeat it. This ancient mechanism once helped our ancestors survive. Conserving mental energy meant responding quickly to familiar situations. But in today's world, the same system often keeps us trapped inside routines we no longer want. There is a story about an old clockmaker whose workshop was filled with hundreds of intricate timepieces. One afternoon, a young apprentice asked him, "How do you build something so precise?" The old craftsman didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a single gear on the workbench, then another, then another. After several minutes, the apprentice finally asked, "When do we build the clock?" The old man smiled. "We already are." He gently turned the first gear. Every other gear began moving with it. "People admire the finished clock," he said. "They rarely appreciate the first gear." Life works much the same way. Everyone wants the finished masterpiece. Very few people are willing to focus on the first small action that makes everything else possible. This is why lasting discipline rarely begins with massive goals. It begins with one repeatable behavior, one decision that becomes easier tomorrow because you practiced it today. Most people underestimate the power of a single action because they judge it in isolation. Reading one page doesn't seem significant. Doing 10 push-ups feels too small to matter. Writing for 10 minutes appears almost meaningless. But discipline is never built through one action. It is built through repetition. Imagine trying to fill a large glass jar with drops of water. One drop changes nothing. A second drop appears equally unimportant. Even after 100 drops, the jar still seems mostly empty. Someone watching for only a few seconds might conclude that the effort is pointless, but they would be judging the process far too early. Eventually, almost without noticing when it happened, the jar begins to fill. The same principle shapes every meaningful habit. Your future is rarely changed by one extraordinary effort. It is shaped by ordinary actions repeated long enough for your brain to accept them as normal. That is why discipline is less about forcing yourself and more about teaching yourself. Every action is a lesson. Every repetition is a vote. Every promise you keep quietly tells your brain, "This is who we are." The remarkable part is that your brain believes what you repeatedly show it, not what you occasionally tell it, because identity is not built by intention. Identity is built by evidence. And every small act of discipline becomes another piece of evidence. Evidence that you are becoming someone different, someone more reliable, someone more focused, someone capable of keeping promises long after motivation has disappeared. The question is no longer whether discipline is possible. The real question is this: what is the first small gear you are willing to place into motion today? Because the life you admire is rarely built through dramatic moments. It is built through quiet repetitions that eventually become impossible to separate from who you are. And once that transformation begins, discipline stops feeling like something you do. It becomes someone you are. If discipline were simply a matter of trying harder, nearly everyone would succeed. Most people genuinely want to become healthier. They want to save more money. They want to read more books. They want to stop procrastinating. They want to become the kind of person who follows through. Desire is rarely the problem. The problem is that we place our faith in something that was never designed to carry the weight of lasting change. We place our faith in willpower. Willpower feels powerful because it arrives with emotion. You watch an inspiring documentary. You finish reading a life-changing book. You hear a speech that fills you with determination. For a brief moment, everything feels possible. You promise yourself that this time will be different. But a few days later, life quietly returns to normal. The excitement fades. The routine disappears. The promise remains unfinished. Many people blame themselves at this point. I just don't have enough discipline. But psychology tells a different story. Willpower is not an unlimited resource. It is a temporary burst of mental energy. Like a battery, it weakens as the day unfolds. Every decision you make quietly consumes attention. What should I eat? Should I answer that message now? Should I finish this task first? Should I keep working or take a break? Individually, these choices seem insignificant. Together, they create mental fatigue. By the evening, your brain begins searching for the easiest path forward. Not because you're weak, because efficiency has always been one of the brain's primary goals. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack up a mountain. At first, every step feels manageable. As the hours pass, the weight feels heavier, even though nothing inside the bag has changed. Your muscles simply become tired. Your mind works much the same way. The more decisions it must consciously manage, the more it begins looking for shortcuts. That is why bad habits often appear strongest when you are stressed, exhausted, or overwhelmed. Those habits require almost no mental effort. They have already become automatic. There is a story about a famous concert pianist who was once asked how she maintained such extraordinary consistency. People assumed the answer would involve exceptional talent or incredible determination. Instead, she smiled and said, "I don't rely on motivation. I rely on routine. Motivation decides whether you begin. Routine decides whether you continue." That distinction changes everything. Most people spend their lives trying to become more motivated. Very few spend time designing better routines. Imagine two people who both decide to read more books. The first person places a book on a shelf across the room. The second places the same book on the pillow before leaving for work. When bedtime arrives, one person must remember to read. The other simply picks up what is already in front of them. The goal was identical. The environment was different. And environment quietly shapes behavior far more than most people realize. Behavioral psychologists have repeatedly found that human behavior is heavily influenced by cues. A notification appears. You reach for your phone. The television turns on. You sit on the couch. The smell of fresh coffee fills the kitchen. You instinctively walk toward it. Most habits begin long before the action itself. They begin with a trigger. Once you understand this, discipline stops feeling mysterious. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to do the right thing?" you begin asking a different question. How can I make the right thing easier to begin? The difference seems small. Its consequences are enormous. Consider a sculptor standing before a block of marble. He does not strike the stone randomly. Each movement is deliberate. Each cut prepares the next. By the end, people admire the finished sculpture. They rarely appreciate the careful decisions that made it possible. Building discipline follows the same principle. Success is rarely one heroic decision. It is thousands of small choices that quietly remove friction from the behaviors you want to repeat. Lay out your running shoes the night before. Keep healthy food where it is easy to reach. Place your notebook on your desk before you sleep. Remove distractions before beginning important work. None of these actions require extraordinary effort, yet each one makes tomorrow's decision slightly easier. And when repeated often enough, easier decisions become automatic decisions. This is why the most disciplined people rarely appear to possess extraordinary self-control. What they often possess is something much more valuable. They have designed lives that require less willpower. Their environment reminds them of who they want to become. Their routines reduce unnecessary decisions. Their habits protect them when motivation disappears. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like resistance. It begins to feel like rhythm, like a musician who no longer thinks about every note, or a writer who naturally reaches for the notebook each morning. The behavior becomes familiar. The familiar becomes effortless. And what once required determination becomes part of identity. Because your brain is always asking the same quiet question, what do we usually do next? Every time you answer with intention, you strengthen that pathway. Every repetition makes tomorrow's answer a little easier. And before long, the habits that once felt impossible begin to feel inevitable. That is the quiet power of discipline. It is not built by extraordinary effort. It is built by ordinary actions repeated until your brain no longer questions them. There is a quiet truth about discipline that most people never discover. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You gradually settle into the level of your identity. First, this sounds almost too simple. After all, isn't success about setting ambitious goals? Goals certainly matter. They give us direction. They point us toward the horizon. But direction is not the same as movement. A map can show you where the mountain stands, cannot climb the mountain for you. Identity is what takes the first step. Imagine meeting two people who have both decided to stop eating unhealthy food. Someone offers each of them a slice of cake. The first person smiles politely and says, "No thanks, I'm trying to eat healthier." The second person gives a different answer. "No thanks, I'm someone who eats healthy." The action is exactly the same. The words are completely different. One person is fighting temptation. The other is expressing identity. That difference may seem insignificant, but your brain notices it. Every action sends a message. Every decision answers a silent question your mind is constantly asking. Who are we becoming? When your actions repeatedly match your values, the brain begins accepting that identity as reality. This is why keeping small promises matters so much. Not because the action itself changes your life, but because it changes the story you tell yourself. There is an old craftsman who was once asked how he trained apprentices to master such precise work. People expected him to describe complicated techniques or expensive tools. Instead, he handed the apprentice a broom. "Before you learn to build," he said, "learn to care for the workshop." For weeks, the young apprentice swept the floors, organized the tools, and cleaned the workbenches. Frustrated, he finally asked, "When will I learn the real work?" The old craftsman smiled. "You already are." A person who cannot care for small responsibilities will never be trusted with greater ones. The lesson had nothing to do with cleaning. It was about identity. The apprentice wasn't learning how to sweep. He was learning what kind of person he was becoming. Modern psychology tells us something remarkably similar. Each time you complete a habit, your brain receives more than the result. It receives evidence. Evidence that you are reliable. Evidence that you finish what you start. Evidence that you can be trusted. Not by other people, by yourself. That may be the most important relationship you will ever build. Because confidence is not created by positive thinking alone. Confidence grows when your actions repeatedly prove your words. Think about someone you deeply trust. Why do you trust them? Probably isn't because they made one grand gesture. You trust them because they have been consistent. They showed up when they said they would. They kept their promises. They behaved the same way day after day. Trust is built through consistency. The relationship you have with yourself follows exactly the same principle. Every promise you break creates a small crack in that trust. Every promise you keep strengthens it. Over time, those small moments become the foundation of self-respect. This is why discipline and confidence are inseparable. One creates the other. There is another reason identity matters so deeply. Your brain is always trying to remain consistent with the person it believes you are. If you see yourself as someone who exercises, skipping a workout begins to feel unusual. If you believe you are someone who reads every day, leaving the book untouched feels incomplete. Your identity begins protecting your habits, not because someone forces you, because inconsistency creates discomfort. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. When your actions conflict with your identity, your brain experiences tension. It naturally seeks to reduce that tension. Most people experience cognitive dissonance in reverse. They repeatedly act in ways that reinforce limiting beliefs. I always quit. I'm terrible with money. I've never been disciplined. Eventually, those statements begin feeling permanent. But they are not permanent. They are practiced, and what has been practiced can be replaced. Imagine a sculptor working with clay instead of stone. Each gentle movement reshapes the figure. One touch changes very little. 1,000 touches create something entirely new. Identity works the same way. You are not trapped inside the person you were 5 years ago, or even yesterday. You are constantly shaping yourself through repeated choices. The remarkable part is that transformation rarely feels dramatic while it is happening. It often feels ordinary, almost invisible. Reading another chapter, choosing water instead of soda, turning off your phone to focus, getting out of bed when the alarm rings. None of these moments seem extraordinary, but your brain keeps count. Every repetition becomes another vote, another signal, another reminder of who you are becoming. One day, someone may describe you as disciplined. They may assume you were born with remarkable self-control. They will never see the hundreds of quiet decisions that created that version of you. The mornings when you showed up anyway. The evenings when you chose progress over comfort. The days when no one was watching. That is where discipline is truly built. Not in moments of applause, but in moments of character. Because every action you repeat is shaping someone. The only question is whether that someone is the person you truly want to become. And once you understand that, discipline is no longer about forcing yourself to act. It becomes the natural expression of the identity you have patiently, quietly, and intentionally practiced every single day. Imagine meeting yourself 5 years from now, not the version shaped by luck, not the version who stumbled into success, but the version who quietly chose discipline every single day. How would that person stand? How would they think? How would they respond when life became difficult? Now ask yourself a different question. When did that future version begin to exist? Was it the day they reached their biggest goal? The day they earned more money? The day they finally felt confident? Or did they begin much earlier, on an ordinary morning when they chose to keep a promise no one else would ever know about? We often imagine that extraordinary people live extraordinary days. The truth is almost the opposite. Extraordinary people become extraordinary because they master ordinary days. There is a story about a stonemason building a bridge across a valley. A traveler stopped to watch him carefully shape one small stone. Curious, the traveler asked, "Why spend so much time on a piece no one will ever see?" The stonemason looked up and smiled, because every stone carries the weight of the bridge. If one hidden stone is weak, everything above it becomes weaker. Character works the same way. The habits no one applauds, the routines no one notices, the promises no one else hears, those are the hidden stones supporting everything your future life will one day become. Every disciplined action strengthens a foundation that cannot always be seen immediately. That is why so many people quit too early. They expect visible results before the foundation has finished forming. A seed buried beneath the soil appears lifeless. Day after day, nothing changes above the ground. It would be easy to believe nothing is happening. Yet beneath the surface, roots are quietly searching for stability. Only after the roots become strong enough does the tree begin to rise. Human growth follows the same rhythm. Before your habits change your life, they change your brain. Before they change your brain, they change your identity. And before they change your identity, they simply ask one small question. Will you do this again tomorrow? This is where patience becomes a hidden form of discipline. Not the patience of waiting, the patience of continuing. Continuing when progress feels invisible. Continuing when excitement disappears. Continuing when no one is watching. Because discipline is never tested on the days you feel motivated. It is revealed on the days you don't. There is another truth that few people talk about. You will miss days. You will make mistakes. You will break routines you promised yourself you would never break again. That is not failure. That is being human. The mistake is not falling off the path. The mistake is believing one misstep means the journey has ended. Imagine climbing a mountain. You stumble over a loose rock. Do you return to the bottom because of one misstep? Of course not. You steady yourself. You regain your balance. And you continue climbing. Discipline works exactly the same way. Consistency is not perfection. Consistency is returning. Returning after distraction. Returning after disappointment. Returning after failure. Returning after success. Returning until the behavior becomes part of who you are. Psychologists have discovered something remarkable about lasting habits. People who maintain positive routines over many years are not the people who never fail. They are the people who recover quickly. They understand that identity is shaped by the direction of repeated choices, not by isolated moments. One missed workout does not create an unhealthy life. One healthy meal does not create lasting health. One productive morning does not build a successful career. One difficult conversation does not transform a relationship. What matters is the pattern, always the pattern, because your future is created by the patterns you repeat, not the promises you make. Imagine looking back at your life decades from now. You probably won't remember every meeting, every email, every ordinary Tuesday, but you will live with the person those ordinary days created. That person is being shaped right now, not next year, not after the perfect opportunity arrives, today, with the next decision you make. Perhaps that is the greatest gift discipline offers. It gives you confidence that your future is no longer controlled by your moods. It gives you freedom from waiting until you feel ready. It teaches you that progress belongs to those who continue, even when progress is difficult to see. The people we admire are not separated from us by talent alone. More often, they are separated by thousands of ordinary decisions that look too small to matter. One page, one workout, one conversation, one promise kept. Repeated long enough, those moments become a life. So tomorrow morning, when your alarm rings, remember this. You are not deciding whether to complete one task. You are deciding what kind of person you are practicing becoming. Every action casts a vote. Every routine writes another sentence in your story. Every ordinary day shapes an extraordinary future. The remarkable thing is that your future self is not waiting somewhere ahead of you. You are creating that person right now. One choice, one habit, one day at a time. And in our next audiobook, The Psychology of Focus, How to Eliminate Distractions and Do Deep Work, we'll explore why attention has become one of the world's most valuable resources, how modern distractions quietly reshape the brain, and the practical psychology behind doing meaningful work in an age that profits from keeping you distracted. Until then, remember this: discipline is not the ability to force yourself forward. It is the quiet decision to become, every day, the person your future is depending on.